So it is the halfway point of the year, and today we're going to do a roundup of the best IEMs that came out in 2026 and late 2025 that I have heard so far. And we're going to go from the least expensive to the most expensive, and starting off around $20, we have the TANGZU 1 or 2 base edition. These are going right into the value tier for the amount of things you get, the cable, the tips. This is one of the best value IEMs you can get around $20. Very good accessories, good sound for the price, you know, smooth, it's bassy if you like a warmer sound. Nothing wrong with the IEM sound wise, and the overall package as a whole is very good value. Then after those, we got some KZ stuff. We got the Duonic and the Duonic bass, we got the Vibe X, we got the Eldar, we got the Phantom. These are all very good value, especially when it goes on sale. The only thing I will watch out for is the QC. Sometimes, you know, you just might get a not so good unit. Overall value, price, and performance, these are very good, but again, watch out for the QC. I would still recommend them, but just, you know, just watch out. Next, we got some KIWIEARS stuff. We got the BELLE, and then we got the Chorus. These are basically the same IEM. The Chorus is a open back version of the BELLE. It's slightly tiny bit more airy and tiny bit more resolving. Like, they're 95 to 99% the same IEM. So for most people, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. I would just go with the BELLE. Both are like a bassy, you know, warm leaning, smooth, very enjoyable musical set. They are pretty good for the price. I would say recommend them. But, you know, value-wise, I would say probably wait for the Chorus to go on sale, and then the BELLE I would recommend just like even retail. After those, we got the OOOPUSX OP.22. These are a pretty, you know, versatile and enjoyable set overall. I would recommend these. The switches do a good job of giving you a balanced sound to base your listen, and the overall tonality is pretty natural. Performance is adequate, and for the price, it's not gonna, you know, break your bank. And overall, these are pretty solid. After those, we got the KIWIEARS CADENZA 2. These are a cleaner, more neutral leaning monitor, like, you know, reference balance listen. They are pretty technical for the price. They can get a little bit sharp when it comes to the 10 to 15k region, but that just might be my unit. If you want a clean and uncluttered sound, these would be a good budget option, and for the performance that you're getting, these are pretty solid for the price. I would recommend them overall, but if you can, obviously wait for these to go on sale. Next, we got the KEFINE Clean SV. These are going to the value tier. These are basically a more versatile version of the CADENZA 2, and for the same amount that you're paying for, you get more variety and less sharpness and slightly better balance in the overall sound when it comes to the treble, and also very technical for the price. These are a very good listen if you want very clean vocals or a more, you know, monitor like balanced listen depending on the nozzle that you use. But unfortunately, after those, we have the DUNU Titan X. These are going to the pass tier because mainly you can get better stuff like the BELLEs, the 1 or 2 bass. They do the same thing but for cheaper with that, you know, bassy, warm leaning vocal presentation. The main issue on the Titan X is that there is a gaping hole in the vocals from 4 to 8k, and for the price, it's just not justified because you can get better stuff at around or cheaper. So because of those reasons, I'm gonna say probably pass on these. Similarly, but not as bad, we got the TANGZU Xuetao. These are marketed as a gaming IEM, but they're not very good for a gaming IEM because it's very like a warm leaning, darker scaling kind of set. It doesn't have the technicalities and the layering to really be called a gaming IEM. Maybe for like open world, maybe, I guess it does come with a mic. Like, it's not a bad IEM, but it's just that it's not very good when it comes to technicalities for the price, so I would just wait for these to go on sale. Moving on, we got the ZIIGAAT collab, the RUMBA. These are also a slightly bassy, like all-rounder kind of listen. They're essentially a less technical version and smoother version of the EW300s. I think they are okay for the price. You can get better stuff. Like the Lua Ultra, for example, is around the same technicalities, if a little bit more, for almost like 2 times less on sale. They are an enjoyable listen. It's just that there is a premium tax with the collab. So I'm gonna say wait for these to go on sale. Otherwise, they are a still decent IEM. After those, we got the TANGZU Harmonic Empire Xiao. These are a very enjoyable listen for female vocals. If you want something that is balanced, but it still has a slight sparkle and extension, slight airiness to the female vocals, then the Xiao is a pretty good option. Performance wise, these are also good for the price. They are slightly less technical than the EW300s for around $10 less, so kind of checks out. Overall, I would say recommend these. Next, we got the TINHIFI T6. These are an all-rounder. They go from kind of like a more sparkly upper mids focus to a more bassy balanced kind of sound. They are pretty decent for the price, around $100. You get the tuning nozzles, good build, good packaging, good accessories overall. I would recommend these. They're not the most unique listen, but for the value you're getting, these are pretty solid if you want an all-rounder with pretty good versatility. Then after those, we got the JUZEAR Defiant Gaming Edition. These are essentially 95% similar to the original Defiant. Main difference would be like the treble variants. Depending on the unit, you might get a little bit more treble on some and less on the other. Basically comes down to unit variance more than anything else. It's still a sub-bass focused, slight V-shaped sound, still a little bit recessed and thin in the lower mids and the vocals, but as an all-rounder, it's technical enough. It does the job, and it's dynamic, it's fun. Not a huge complaint for around $100. If you're to have the OGs, you don't need to get these. I want to put it into rec tier, but because of the unit variance of the treble, like it's supposed to be the same IEM according to ZIIGAAT, but there's a unit variance at the treble. QC wise, I would still watch out for it, but overall, I'm gonna in between maybe and a rec, so maybe at the bottom of rec. But moving on, we got the EPZ-P40s next. These are a clean, leaner bass sound with a slight bright tilt. They remind me of a cleaner version of the ZIIGAAT EM6L, equally as smooth as them when it comes to the upper mids, the treble. Very good for EQ, very good technical performance for the price. Only main issue is that without EQ, it's like the low end just sounds a bit thin. So I'm gonna say stock, this is a maybe, but if you use EQ, these are very good value. It goes into value tier. Next, we got the KEFINE ARNAR. This is a high scaling, dark leaning, but still balanced kind of listen in the low end somehow. The vocals still good, they pop out, they're clean, they're not congested, but you do need volume and scaling for these. These are a more niche IEM. They do have variety with the tuning nozzles, but if you're not cranking these up, you're gonna think they just sound low res and a bit just like too dark and low energy, low detail when it comes to the treble. So because of that, I'm gonna put it into maybe, because even though I like it, it might not just be a hit for everyone. Then after those, we got the KINERA PHOENIXCALL 2.0. These are a lot better than the OGs, much more natural in the timbre, better detail, better bass texture. This is a bassy V-shaped leaning IEM, but they're not overly aggressive and sharp, peaky in the treble and the upper mids. It's a pretty like refined V-shaped kind of sound, but with really good bass texture, like on par with the OG Odyssey and the Astralis. I like them because they're dynamic, they're fun, they're vibrant, they're colorful. But for some that might not like that, V-shaped kind of listen, it might be a bit too bright for you. So I can't say it's value tier, even though I do think it's pretty up there when it comes to overall performance and pricing, but I'm gonna put it into rec. These are still very good. Moving on, we got the TANGZU Harmonic Empire ZHANG LIAO. These are a warm leaning, flat, high scaling, immersive set. They remind me of a more balanced and slightly more technical version of the AFUL Explorer. I recommend them at higher volumes. They are more of a niche listen with the flat tuning and the warmer kind of mid-bass leaning kind of sound. Technical performance is pretty solid, nothing crazy, not sparkly, but the layering, the overall clarity is there with volume. So I would still put it into maybe, like it's not a badly tuned IEM, it's not unnatural, it's just that it's more of a niche listen. After those, we got Andy's collab, the AAV CJ20s. These are bright leaning but still full. They're airy, they're pretty technical, very good for like cymbals, very good for rock, metal instrumentals. They have the weight, the hit to the drums, but you also get the airy treble extension. They are a little bit bright leaning, so if you're like sensitive in the treble region, this might be a little bit bright and too much. But overall, I would recommend these. These are pretty solid as a rock and band kind of listen IEM. Then after the CJ20s, we got the HIDIZS MP145 Pro. These are also a bright leaning planar, but instead of focusing on the airiness in the treble, these are more clean, tamer in the low end, and more emphasized in the vocals, and have a more sparklier sound instead of like an airy playback. They are very good for female vocals, slower songs like indie, ballads, acoustics. The extension, the layering in the vocals are very, very good. I like them because I like vocals, but they might not be an all-rounder and they might not be like to everyone's preference. So I'm gonna probably put this into maybe, even though it is pretty technical for the price. Speaking of all-rounders, we got the LETSHUOER Astralis next. These are a sub-bass focused, slightly V-shaped leaning all-rounder kind of sound. They are very good when it comes to the low-end texture, the impact, slam, tactility. Probably one of the best at around $200. Performance-wise, these do the job. They're not gonna be a value monster like the Super Mix 4. They have enough extension in the vocals, in the treble. It's not dark, it's not unnatural. The treble could be airier, right? It could be smoother, but overall, if you're looking for a V-shaped leaning sound with very good sub-bass texture, these are a good recommendation. Then after those, those, we got the KIWIEARS HALCYON with the MEMS. These are well implemented. The treble is natural, it's smooth enough. It's not like super grainy or very sharp or too boosted when it comes to the implementation. Sub-bass sector also fun, bouncy, rumbly. Overall extension, balance, and the vocals, treble, it is all there. If you're looking for an all-rounder that's pretty smooth, non-fatiguing, but also dynamic enough, then the Halcyon is a pretty good option and I would recommend them. And speaking of MEMS drivers, we have the Binary EP321 next. These are a cleaner, more brighter version of the Halcyons. They have more treble energy, more micro details, leaner low end. Overall, they are more technical, but also less all-rounded, less smooth on your ears. Timbre wise, the treble does feel smoother and more natural on the Halcyons, but because of the extra boost and the energy on the 321s, you just hear the treble details better. So it's kind of a trade-off, depends on what you want, better detail or better musicality and timbre. So I always have put these in rec gear around the same level as the Halcyons. But moving on, we got the TANCHJIM Soda. These are a balanced, all-rounder, very natural, full, smooth kind of listen. They are inoffensive, they do the job, they do nothing wrong, but they're also not very unique. They're also a bit pricey for $300 given that the overall technical performance is around like the same as the Halcyons and even slightly less than the Super Mix 4. So when it comes to value, I'm gonna say wait for these to go on sale before you get them. They do look very nice, but it's just that it's not unique enough to justify the price. And similarly, speaking of being not unique and also a little bit overpriced, we got the AFUL Performer 8S. These are a neutral, flat, balanced, tame kind of listen. They are essentially a more expensive version of the ZHANG LIAO. They're slightly more technical than the ZHANG LIAO, but when it comes to the timbre, the low end is better on the TANGZU, and it's also like $100 cheaper. So I would definitely wait for these to go on sale because they are not very unique, and also you can just get the ZHANG LIAO for like $100 less. Moving on, speaking of a more reference and flat IEM, we have the CRINEAR reference. Crin called these the flattest IEM in the world. I think they are pretty decent at higher volume. They're smooth, they're natural, the vocals have a good power extension to them. I would still recommend them if you can get these on sale, so I will put them in maybe get these for like 300, maybe less than 300. There's a pretty decent because of the accessories, the build. Overall, as a whole, the IEM is good at higher volumes, but value wise, there are much better stuff. Then after those, we got the LETSHUOER Effect Audio Amber. These are very overpriced for a single planar. Now don't get me wrong, I do like this sound. They're essentially the final version of the full Explorer, better bass texture, more slam, more treble extension, more airiness, more detail to the sound, but also smooth enough and scale is very good. It's just that these are like $500 for a single planar. So yeah, definitely overpriced. I'm gonna say maybe if you can find these for a very good deal for like maybe 300, I would say at that price, sure, why not? But if anything higher than that, I will skip these. Next, we got the Yang & Baker, and these are essentially a bassier version of the ZIIGAAT Arcanus. So it's got that slight goosebump feeling in the treble, but you just get more bass now. Vocals are still pretty well extended. They're not as in focus and emphasized as the Arcanus, so I do prefer the Arcanus because of that. But overall, as an all-rounder, these are still decent. I think they are slightly pricey given the performance. You can get better stuff around 200, 250. So I would say wait for these to go on sale. They're still an enjoyable listen. Then after those, we got the EPZ 550s. These are essentially a more textured version of the original of the Audio Oracles. They are very good for a clean, balanced vocals. You get the slight airiness and bite in the consonants and the entrails now. So overall, I enjoy them. I would recommend them if you want a balanced, clean, all-rounder vocal listen. Next, we got the MOONDROP Armature R12, and these are another all-rounder. They are full, they sound natural, performance is good. It's not the best for the price, not the worst for the price. It doesn't have amazing treble extension, it's not super airy. Bass texture isn't the most impactful, rumbly, tactile, and it's a good all-rounder. But for $800, definitely not. Like, you can get a lot better stuff even at $500. These would be correctly priced at around like $350 to $500. It doesn't have like a unique soundstage, it doesn't have like anything airy, sparkly. The bass texture is all right. It's not top tier for around $1,000, right? So I'm gonna say probably a pass unless you can find these for, again, $500 or even like $400 ideally, but you're most likely not going to be able to go that low with these. So yeah, however, the Meze Astro does have that sauce and the uniqueness for the price tag of around $900. Now obviously it is still very expensive for a single DD at $900, but it is pretty unique in the reverb, the decay, you know, the 3D soundstage, and then the immersion factor, the scaling, also very good. All those things combined makes the IEM a more unique kind of product in the market. I'm not arguing or justifying for a single DD IEM at $900, but they do have the sauce, and the build quality, the fit, the comfort is the extra sprinkle on top. So I recommend them, but I totally get it if you think they're overpriced, because obviously it's a single DD. I just think they are more unique and kind of like stand out in the market. Then after those, we have the IOCLOs, and if you want an all-rounder, these are basically a better version of the Moondrop R12s, better treble extension, more detailed, overall less bland, has more micro details, you know, more dynamic. It's just the more musical, enjoyable set than the R12 if you want an all-rounder. Also good technicalities for the price, and it's actually justified at around $1,000. I would definitely give these a shot if you're looking for a endgame all-rounder sound. And then lastly, we have the worst value IEM on the list, the Software SC6 Live. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad IEM, because it's not. It's pretty natural. The mid-bass texture is very good. It's very full. It's very smooth. It scales incredibly well. These are made for like higher volume. They probably do very good for live performances, you know, musicians, which is what they're marketed for. However, the asking price of $1,100 and then the technicalities to back that price up is just not there, right? You can get the CRINEAR reference. You can get the Software Volume S for like 3 times cheaper, similar sound profile, you know, similar sound performance. Now, if you do really want a bassier version of those two, because it does still have its own spot, again, it is smooth, dark leaning, it has better scaling than those, but I would definitely heavily pass on these. If you are just a regular audiophile, I think these are very bad when it comes to the value. But that aside, that is all for this speedrun and ranking. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know what your pick is for the best value IEM of 2026 so far, and I will see everyone in the next video. Thanks for watching.
Special thanks to Mr. Dom Q, Zenu, B. Urak, Walker Standard, User, Tsukasa, Guava Juice Bane, Polly J, Mr. Gorilla, CT Jax, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, PM The Wizard, Obi, Treble Well Extended, Matt Herc, TR8, Shembakle, FKSRG, Cousin Fat Fat, Tomat Pat Farshay, Gatwell, Addy, Michael, Trackstar, Raphael, Ori, Ryan, Juniper, Nadim, Chimika, Raj, Javier, Gelbog, Ocean, BC Knight, AK131, Emin Gelato, Unbalance, Vitor, Tuna, JRX, Samuel, John Simon, Archie, Forrest, Ninja Watcher, The Audio, Brendan Fish, Sir Eisen, JPLA, Partly Timed, Blue Nerd, ATGBB, Furuto, Geranium, Spinner, Sam Z, Raj, Your Boy Banana, Etune, Suli, Grizzly, Lian, Scafrog, Mark M, CD Giddy, Voltage, The Hyperion, Mega, Francis, RJ, Doc Naruto, It's Mark, Hedgehog, and another. Thank you guys so much for the support.